In this video, I'm going to explain ARC, automatic reference counting, and what is the difference between strong, weak, and unowned reference, and what is strong reference cycle. So now let's start with ARC. So what is ARC? So Swift uses ARC to track and manage your app's memory usage, and it does the memory management so that we don't have to bother about that. And ARC automatically frees up the memory used by the class instance when those instances are no longer needed. And ARC only affects reference type like classes. It does not affect value type like structure. Value types are copied when they are passed or referenced. So beyond the local scope, there's nothing to retain in the memory. So ARC basically it helps the memory management of Swift, and it does by deallocating the instance of the class as their reference type. So when they are not needed in the system, so it deallocate them automatically. So let's come to how ARC works. So whenever we create an instance of a class, it allocates a chunk of memory to it to store its information and store properties like their members. So it tracks whether the instance is still needed or not. If it is not needed, then it delocates that memory for that instance. And if it is delocates the memory, even if it is needed, then the system will most likely crash. So it is delocating the memory for that instance. But if that instance is still required and it is deallocated from the memory, and if we try to access that instance, our system will crash at that time. So now the third point is, so for tracking the instance, it tracks how many properties, constants or variables are currently referring to each class instance. ARC will not deallocate an instance as long as at least one active reference to that instance still exists. So like whenever we create an instance of a class, we assign them to a constant or variable or some other property. So there it creates a stronghold of that instance to that property, and the ARC keep track of that, like how many strongholds are created on that instance. And by stronghold I mean strong reference. So for that, Swift Swift basically it comes to define a property for a particular instance of a class. Like every instance has a property called retain count, and whenever the retain count is greater than 0, the object is kept in memory, and when the retain count reaches to 0, the object is removed from the memory. So what is retain count? It is the number of references of that instance, and they are holding. And so the logic is according to the retain count. If it is more than 0, the ARC will not allocate that memory of that instance. And if it is greater than 0, 1, 2, 3, then it can delocate the memory for that instance. So now let's see an example. So here I'm having a class named person having a variable name as string. So here I have created an init, and in init I am defining my name and also printing that name that it is being initialized, and in dinit I am printing that name is being initialized. So now I have created a reference. I have created a reference 1. This is an instance of person class, and it is of type person optional. It can have nil value as well as op an object of person. So I have initialized it with name Abhishek. So now reference 1 is having a stronghold on person. Now I have also created a reference 2. So this instance is not initialized, so it is equal to nil for now. And now I initialized with reference 1. So now reference 2 is having a strong hold on reference 1. So this is where the retain count of reference 1 is 1, because it's having a strong hold, because reference 2 is having a strong hold on reference 1, so that's why the retain count for reference 1 is a 1. So if I try to delocate reference 1, the dnit will not get called, as it is having a retain count more than 0. Reference 2 is having a strong reference on reference 1. Let's see this with code. Okay, let's copy this class. Okay, so here I'm creating my reference 1 of type person optional and initialized with my name. Okay, another reference. Okay, now initialized this with reference 1. Okay, so till now, as you can see, reference is having a strong hold on person, and also reference 2 is having a strong hold on reference 1. Now if I try to deinitialized my first reference, which is reference 1, to nil, so whenever I deallocate my instance, my dnet should be called, but as reference 2 is having a strong hold on reference 1, so that's why my dinit is not called. My init is called, but dinit is not called. So this is how ARC works. Okay, so now let's come to our second topic: strong, weak, and unowned. Okay, let's come to strong. Strong reference increase the retain count of instance by they refer by 1, and this prevents the ARC from removing the object from the memory. Whenever we assign a class instance to a property constant or variable, that property constant or variable makes a strong reference to that instance. So here the point is that whenever we create a strong reference, so the retain count for that instance they are referring is increased by 1, and this prevents the ARC from removing that object from the memory. So it is simple. And whenever we assign uh, the instance to a property constant or variable, it makes a strong reference to that instance by default. It is a by default setting. So now let's see here an example. I have created two instance of same person class, and till now their value is nil. Now if I try here, okay, now here I initialized them with reference 1. So the return count for reference 1 instance is increased by 1 here and increased by 1 here, so it get equal to 2. So now if I try to deinitialize my reference 1, it will my dnet will not get called as its retain count is 2. And also we can see this in code. Okay, just copy this down. This is my reference 3, and here I'm initializing my reference 3 with reference 1. And if I try to deinitialize my reference 1, so what will happen? Yeah, same, the dnet will not get called as it's the reference count, the retain count, sorry, count of reference 1 is equal to 2. So what will happen if I deinitialized reference to here? Okay, still the D init is not called for reference to, because reference 2 is also having a strong reference on reference 1, and as we know, reference 1 is not deinitialized, it is still in the memory. So that's why my reference 2 having a strong reference, having a written count of 1 also, and my reference 3 is also having a written count of 1. But if I try to deallocate the reference 3, now my dnet is called here, as you can see. Okay, so why? Okay, so the only thing stopping the reference 3 to deinitialized is that it is having a strong reference to reference 1, but I already set my reference 1 to nil, and reference 1 is only able to survive because reference 3 is still not equal to null, it is not deinitialized. So it removed both, so I have removed both of the dependency, the reference 1, the reference 2 and reference 3, from the stronghold of reference 1. So now it become equal to 0, and this also become equal to 0, and also this become equal to 0. So that is why at this point my dnet is called. Okay, now let's come to weak. So it is a reference that does not keep a strong hold on the instance it refers to, and so does not stop ARC from disposing of the reference instance, and that's why the property must be an optional. It does not increase the retain count. So what is a weak reference? So a weak reference does not hold a strong hold on the instance it referring, and it does not increase the retain count of that instance. It is still remain to 0. So that's why ARC can easily deallocate that instance memory, and that's why this property must be an optional, because it can be deinitialized, it can have nil value, it does not increase the retain count. Yeah, so let's see with an example. If I created a weak variable, weak instance reference 2, then if I create a reference from reference 2 to reference 1, it will be counted as weak. It does not increase the retain count of reference 1. So then if I try to setting up reference 1 as nil, it will call the dnet. Let's see in the code. So this is the scenario. So here I try to deinitialize my reference 1. What will happen? My dnet will not get called. Now if I created a weak instance, it will create a weak friends, and also the retain count of reference 1 is still 0, it is not increased by 1. So now if I try, yeah, my deinitialized is called. Okay, now let's come to unowned. So it is like a weak reference. An unknown reference does not keep a strong hold on the instance as well. However, it is used when a other instance has some lifetime or a longer lifetime, which means expected to have a value and cannot become nil. So here we are saying that unowned is also like a weak reference, but it do have a some lifetime more than the weak reference. The weak reference does not have any lifetime. It is straight deallocated from the memory, but unowned it have some lifetime. So that's why we cannot have an optional value for that. So we need to create a non-optional for unowned. And yeah, as you can see in this example, I've created a unowned, and as it is unowned, so here I need to give an optional value as well. And if I try to deinitialize my reference one, so this is a weak reference, so my deinit will get cold. So let's see in the code. Here it is an unowned and a non-nil. So what will happen? Yeah, it will, I need to give some optional value, person, name, some random name. Okay, yeah, so it is also a weak reference, and yeah, retain count is also 0, and dnit also get cold. Okay. Okay, so that's it for this topic. Now comes to strong reference cycle. So what is strong reference cycle? So this is a scenario where two instances is having a strong reference to each other, creating a loop where either of them will not get deinitialized. So this is a scenario where two instances having a strong reference to each other, and we cannot deallocate either of them because they both are saved from a strong reference created by the instance they are referring to. So let's see with an example. So I have this person class. This is the same class I'm using, but except I have created a variable named gadget, and this gadget is of type gadget class, and it's an optional value. And here I'm printing the name in init and dinit. And in gadget class it is quite same as person class, except its variable have model, and I'm printing model in init and dinit. And here also I have created an owner variable which is of person class. So both the class having a variable which is of their opposite class. Okay, so here I have created a instance of person as person1, and I have initialized with name John, and here I have created another instance of gadget as gadget1 with model hg123. Okay, so this is the condition which is known as strong reference cycle. So okay, let's see this condition. So I'm what I'm doing here, so I am referring my gadget1 to person1 gadget. So I'm creating a strong reference from instance 1 to instance 2. Instance 1 is person1 and instance 2 is gadget1. And in this line I am also creating a strong reference, but this time I am creating it the reference from gadget1 to person1. So both of them having a strong reference to each other, both are having a strong hold on each other. So if I try to deinitialize either of them, my deinit will not get cold in each case. So as you can see in this, okay, let's delete this code and just copy these classes. Okay, so I have also created this instances. Now let's first create those loop. So person1, I'm setting the gadget of person1 as gadget 1 and the owner of gadget 1 as person 1. So here is the strong reference loop, both of them having a retain count of 1 and 1, and most important is that both of them referring to each other. Now if I try to deinitialize any of the instance, so my deinitialize is not called, as you can see. Deinitialized of person class is not called. And even if I try to deinitialize my gadget 1, so I'm trying to deinitializing both of them, but still I'm not getting any dnet running. So this is the condition which is arise due to this strong reference loop. And how to solve this problem? Okay, to resolve the strong reference cycle, we can use weak and unowned, and we can create a weak reference, and ARC will automatically set a weak reference to nil when the instance that it refers to is delocated. So what it means that we can use a weak or unowned reference so that from one side my loop will get a weak reference, and if I try to deinitialize that instance which is referring to a weak instance, then we can successfully deinitialize that instance, and my ARC, it will automatically set the value of that instance, of that weak instance, to nil. Okay, so what I'm saying that let's create a weak owner. So the owner is weak now. Now it is having a weak reference. This is a weak reference from owner, from gadget to person. It's a weak reference. So now if I try to deinitialize my person, what will happen is, yes, my deinitialized of person is cold. Dnet is cold. John is being deinitialized. And then I can also deinitialized this. What will happen? Yes, it is also deinitialized successfully. So this is how we can solve this problem, and we can also use Unowned. Yeah, so that's it in this video. I hope you understand well, and if you want to keep these notes, I have pinned the link below, and you can also check out Swift documentation for more. It is good. Okay, also pinning that too. Have a great day. Thanks.